So when we first use the wedge, we want to make sure people understand how to get accustomed to it. Some people are strong enough to do a lot of exercises on it right out of the gate, but their backs might be sensitive. Some people are more deconditioned and their backs are sensitive, or their backs may not be sensitive. So this is a walkthrough to help you to get on it for the first time, to kind of figure out where you're at. And what we do is, first and foremost, we always get on the wedge from the bridging position. So you're down on the floor, your feet are hip width apart, you make sure your toes are pointed forward, and then you push into your heels at about a 45-degree angle to push your hips up into a bridge. Make sure your knees don't flare. Try to keep your knees close together so that they stay in line with your hips and your ankles. And you're gonna sit yourself down on the wedge. Now you sit it in the lower part of your lower back. It's lower than most people think it's supposed to be. Most people place it too high. In this position, it's gonna be uncomfortable in the beginning because your spine's not used to bending. Spines are typically too stiff. So when you place it in the lower part of your lower back. So you see my glutes are hanging in the air. When we start the movements, the first movement that we like to use is single knee raise with counter pressure. You want to make sure the knee doesn't come in closer than the hip, so that the knee stays above the hip, and I push my knee into my hand into my knee, and it forces my stomach to engage. Go ahead and switch to the other side. Switch to the other side, 1, 2, 1, 2, maybe 3 to 5 times on each side, and then push yourself up into a bridge. If the bridge feels uncomfortable when you do that, then you've done too many repetitions. Do less repetitions. You don't want to, if you ever feel a bite in your back when you push yourself up into a bridge, you've been on the wedge too long, or you've done an exercise that's too challenging for your back sensitivity at this point in time. The next movement that we do is we imagine that there's an egg underneath my left heel. I'm not going to break the egg. Now I'm not going to lift my foot from the floor, but I'm trying to lighten the weight in my left foot. So I lighten the weight in my left foot, and then I counter pressure my right knee, the same as I did before. Now the egg is underneath my right foot. So I lighten the weight in my right foot and I counter pressure. 3, 5 times on each side, and then push up into a bridge. From this position, we like to see if we can get to tabletop. This is the tabletop position. When you're in the tabletop position, again, you want to make sure the knees are above the hips. If you feel the thighs in this position, let the feet hang down. That will quiet the thigh muscles. You don't want the thigh muscles engaged. If your back is uncomfortable when you're in tabletop, then the wedge is placed too high. You'd move it down a thread, maybe a 1/4 of an inch toward your feet, and then come back to tabletop. In the tabletop position, you want to make sure that your belly is working, but your back is comfortable. So the way we set up for exercises, in order to be able to do exercises, is to get to tabletop, make sure the back is comfortable, but the belly's engaged. So from this position, what you're going to do is you're going to counter pressure your right knee, 1, 2, counter pressure your left knee, 1, 2. 3 to 5 times on each side, go ahead and bridge. You're going to come back to tabletop. In this position, you're going to double counter pressure both legs, 1, 2. Counter pressure, 1, 2, release, 1, 2. Maybe 5, maybe 10 times. Come back up and bridge. And then from here, you start the movements. So now we start the single knee raise. Lower the knee and then raise. Now if you're performing the motions, meaning you're creating these movements with your legs, then what you're doing, if you feel your back as you're making these movements, but your tabletop position is comfortable, if you feel your back as you make the movements, then you shorten the range of motion. So if I felt my back as I lowered my foot there, then instead of lowering this far, I'd lower this far. Make the movement only as small as it can be, as it needs to be, so that your back stays quiet. You don't want to feel your back when you do these exercises. You work through maybe 30 seconds to a minute at the most. Go ahead and bridge. Come back up. Now you're going to double knee raise. So you lower both knees. And again, if I lowered both knees, there's more weight in my stomach now. If I lowered both knees and I felt my back, then I'd move a shorter range of motion. What matters is that your back stays quiet. So We use this introductory system, this introductory pattern, to make sure that we get your back comfortable. Most people, even with sensitive backs, as they go through this sequence, their back will start to become more and more comfortable on the wedge. The way the wedge works is to put pressure into your spine, but you can't have so much pressure that your spine is uncomfortable. So we ease the pressure in little by little by little, and your spine actually adapts to it very, very quickly. In most instances, even very sensitive backs, as we go through the sequence of working with them over a course of maybe 10 to as much as 20 minutes, we can get them so that they can do any number of exercises that you'll see in the introductory exercise video. That comes right along with this.